In this video, we are going to discuss on how to help our children create a healthy relationship with food. My name is Dorcas. Let's begin. I will discuss on a few tips that can help us be able to help our children make informed decisions as regards food and also be able to appreciate diversity in terms of color, textures, flavor of different kinds of food. Sometimes as parents, we struggle a lot to be able to help our children take or consume certain foods. So we can discuss a few tips and see how this can be possible. The foods you choose make a difference. Generally, a healthy relationship with food allows us to honor our bodies. You are what you eat. Basically, by looking at a person or looking at a child would be a reflection of how the dietary practices of that child or even of an adult or any human being is. So our body honors by reciprocating based on what we are offering the body. So we start. Number one, we start with a positive language around food and food choices. You find that most of the times parents are the greatest role models for their young children and teenagers. So the kind of language we use around food dictates on how the child will perceive that kind of food. So it is important we refrain from talking about your diet or your dissatisfaction with your body or certain foods in front of your children, trying to stigmatize an entire food group. Like, for example, you find somebody will say, I am too fat or I am too overweight because I eat carbohydrates or because I eat fats. Such kind of language, the child is able to pick that you as a parent, you are dissatisfied with certain foods. And that is what has resulted to you not being satisfied with how you look or how you present. So when the child starts perceiving a certain food in such light, you find they will have difficulties in accepting food groups. And probably, as we discussed in our earlier video, when you're looking at a balanced diet, it compromises of all the entire food groups. Portion and the frequency of intake is key. So don't criminalize a food in front of your children. Do not overglorify certain foods. Avoid food rewards. You find that sometimes you may get into a habit of, if a child eats this food, then for example, you can tell your child, if you have your beans or you have your vegetables, then I will offer you some chips, or I'll offer you a sausage, or I'll offer you a kind of food. So when you do that, the child will start perceiving that food as being a more superior food because it is related to a food reward. So we usually say, even when you want a child to take a particular food or you're encouraging your child to take meals, don't reward with food. Reward with non-food items. Like, for example, you would tell a child, if you take XYZ, if you take your vegetables well, then over the weekend we can go for swimming. Over the weekend we can go for a getaway, and things that are not food related, so that you don't over glorify a certain food. Because you usually find the foods that we glorify are mostly, you'll find it's junk food that we glorify. That if you eat this food, I'll give you a sweet, I'll give you a chocolate. So avoid over glorifying foods in front of your children. Number three, involve children in meal preparation and cooking. Children who are of age, probably around 4 years and above, they can take part in the kitchen. You can help them, show them, chop this for me, organize this for me, put for me this in a plate. That helps a child to be able to appreciate the different kinds of food, because as they try to help you in meal preparation and cooking, they will also be motivated to kind of taste, because they have already interacted with that food. So that is another way of helping a child to be able to appreciate diversity in terms of meals. Number four, be role model to your children. Explore the food together. If you want a child to start learning a new food, even if you have already consumed the food yourself earlier on, let it look like it's the first time that you're doing it. You want to explore the food together with your child, because children, most of the times, as we said, the parents or the adults in the family are role models to these children. So if then you want a child to learn a new food, explore the food together. Don't refrain from trying a food. Like, for example, you want a child to try this particular food, yet yourself, you're not even tasting the food. You have brought your child some vegetables to have for lunch or maybe for dinner, and yourself, the plate that you're having does not have those vegetables. So the child will also be wondering, why am I being given this and not my mom or my dad or whoever relative the child is with at home is not having the same meal. Number five, you provide structures and routines where meals and snacks are concerned. In a home, it's important to have a structure in terms of how you feed. You find that most of the times we rarely organize our meals or rarely organize the snacks. You find like tomorrow we'll have lunch at 2 p.m. The day before it was at 4 p.m. So you find even in terms of how the children snack or even the way we snack as adults, there's no structure. You're just walking around, you pick a banana, you're walking around, you pick an apple, you pick some nuts, you pick this and that. You find that will eventually affect how the child feeds even during the meal times, because the more the child snacks, the less they would want to try out new things, the less they would want to try out meal times, especially the main meals. Number 6, set aside time in your week for family meals. Most of the times, probably because of the busy schedules that a parent may have or a guardian may have, you find that rarely do people get to sit at the table and feed together. So you'll find a child is feeding at 6 p.m. or fed at 7. The parent or the guardian is coming in at 9. So there's no really time even for the parent to be able to create. You might be very healthy, have very, very healthy feeding habits as a parent, but because your child rarely interacts with you, they are not able to copy the behaviors that you're having as far as meal times is concerned. So set aside at least some time in your week, whether it is a weekend, whether you're dealing with breakfast or dinner times, at least try and allocate some time that the child can also be able to be part of the family setup when feeding. So the child is able to pick up the good behaviors that you as a parent you have in terms of the meal combination or with the attitudes and practices you have surrounding the food. Number 7, you expose your children to fruits and vegetables by putting them on the plate. Usually, sometimes you find, especially children who are above 1 year, you find parents will complain that they don't accept to take these vegetables or that vegetable. Reason is probably that child has not interacted with that vegetable before. So you have not been giving the baby vegetables until they are 2 or 3 years old. And now you want this baby to take the vegetables or the fruits or certain fruits. So you find this child does not have any relationship with this food. This child does not know the taste, does not know the flavor, does not even have a feel of the texture of that kind of food. So what you do, if you happen to have a late introduction, or even as you work on introducing the food, try and be putting, whether the child eats or not, but consistently put that food on the child's plate. So if it's some vegetables, as you serve, if it's dinner or lunch, put a spoon or two of those vegetables. Probably the first 2 3 days, the child may not touch just observe and eat the rest of what the child is used to. But with consistency, this will help. It will give the child some sort of curiosity. This food is always on my plate. So day one, they probably would want to take, maybe even just to touch it. So that's a way of, because touch is a way of communication. So touch is a way that this child is feeling, okay, this is how this texture feels like. The next time they would want possibly even to smell it. Another child will want maybe even to taste it. And as days go by, you find that the child is learning to be more appreciative to that food because there is consistency in interaction with the food. Talk about healthy balance and making healthy choices rather than good or bad food. This also goes to the point of do not criminalize food. Okay. When you're talking about food to your children, talk about the healthy aspect of that food. If you're looking at fats, there's nothing wrong with fats, but how you consume and how much you consume is the issue. So don't criminalize and say, no, fats do this to us, they are bad foods. No, just talk about what are the health benefits of this food. Okay. How much of this food can I be able to take? Which is the healthy way of incorporating food in this diet. So discuss food with a child from the point of a healthy food and a healthy balance and a healthy choice rather than a good and bad food. Don't say this food is bad. Okay, or this food is good, because if you say the food is bad, then you are creating a bad relationship between the child and that food. If you're saying the food is good, the child may tend to hold a certain food with very high regard, and that's what we don't want. We want the child to be able to understand the healthy balance of that food, the health benefits of that food, and how to best incorporate it in his day-to-day routine in terms of meal. Then number 9, you heal from your own relationship with food. If you want to impact good behavior or good food choices or good relationships with food with your child, we have to heal from our own relationship with food. Like, for example, you may find some of us as parents, you may have comfort feeding. So if you're stressed, you will want to eat all manner of things. If you're even when you're in the house, even your portions, the way you portion your food, even the way you look at certain foods, even the way you related with certain foods as a child. Like, for example, there are certain people who will not stand maybe pumpkin. Why? Because when they were younger, they had pumpkin almost the entire week. So you find in your adulthood, you rarely even want to see that food. So we have to heal from our own relationship with food so that we are able to translate good food choices to our children. Because if you're having a bad relationship with certain food, how then do you translate it to be good to your child? Yourself, when you're cooking pumpkin, even in the house, you're frowning, you're making faces, even when you're serving it, you're serving it, making faces and all that. Because you have not healed from your own relationship with that food, it is translating the same to your child. Because children are very observant. They will look at what you're doing and what is your language. It may not be the actual wording, even the way you behave around that food also tells this child something. It's just even like when you're weaning a child at 6 months or starting complementary feeding at 6 months, you find as you feed your baby, as young as that baby is, even around 7 months, they are looking at your facial expressions when you're feeding them. You can't be feeding me and you're frowning, even you don't want actually even to touch that food. The child will reject the food because the child can already feel the negative energy that you are emitting around that particular food. So, most importantly, as parents, as guardians, as caregivers, we need to heal from our own relationship with food so that we can be able to embrace diversity and be able to help our children be able to make food choices. Okay. So remember, at all times, we say when it comes to our children, as parents, as caregivers, we are the advocates. We want to train our child in the best way possible. That even when you look at that child, you are actually proud of the food choices that this child is making based on what you have impacted on your child. Thank you for listening and all the best as we help our children have diversity and appreciate food and have the best of relationships with food. Thank you.